What's up, everybody? This is Cody, aka DFS Prodigy, coming to you live with MMA Lock of the Night. Y'all pretty much know him in the UFC atmosphere. He's a high quality guy that always talks about his picks online on Twitter and everything. I'm a huge fan of his. I'm happy to be having him on my podcast and YouTube channel, basically just talking about the UFC card. What do you think of this UFC card, my man?
It's not too bad, right? I think we're scheduled for 13 fights earlier in the week. One of them falls off, and we get a short notice replacement here with Hubbard and Bush. But like overall, it's not too bad of a card. We get to see where Whittaker and Gastelum, how that fight would have truly played out had it happened back in February 2019. Yeah. Sherman versus Arlovsky. A lot of people like to talk shit about Sherman, but I think he has a little bit more steam on him than people are expecting. And then seeing how Abdulrazak Alhassan does up at 185 now that he's kind of been forced to go up to that weight class, how does he fill out there? So there's a lot of good question marks and a lot of good fights on this fight card that I'm looking forward to breaking down. I think there's some good betting spots, some good Draftkings spots, and really looking forward to breaking it down with you, my man.
For sure. So we're going with the Draftkings aspect. I just posted a video about the betting picks. So you'll want to check that out. You can always check out his MMA Lock of the Night's content, which I'll have all his links in the description below at the very end of this video, which we'll go over that later on. Y'all here for UFC. That's what we're here for. Also, enough of that. So let's dig into this card, my man. So with Whittaker and Gastelum, what do you think of this fight?
Man, the one question mark that you always got to have with Robert Whittaker going into his fights is how long is his durability going to hold up, right? The only guy to really knock him out recently was Israel Adesanya, but every single fight he gets into, it seems like his opponents are rocking him, and that's not a good look, especially coming in here against a guy like Kelvin Gastelum, who still does have some bombs in his hands. Last time we did see Gastelum knock anybody out was actually Michael Bisping back in 2017, but since then he hasn't really gotten a knockout in that amount of time. But I do like Whittaker's game. He can make some takedowns if he wants to, but I don't think that's the approach that he should be taking here against Gastelum, who's a great scrambler, great wrestler himself too, and has some pretty good BJJ to boot. So I think that Whittaker's approach here is just going to be stand, strike, land some significant strikes, maybe land a knockdown or so. That's something that he's been able to do in his past couple of fights. But I think his striking style is just a little bit more versatile than what Kelvin Gastelum brings to the table here, which is why I think he'll beat him over that 15-minute mark. In that $9,000 range, though, like 9,100, I think there's other guys that have higher ceilings in terms of what they can score, even though they're going to be fighting it, 3 rounds or 2 rounds less than what Whittaker's going to be bringing to the table. I like Whittaker here, but in terms of if you're talking about like optimum for one of those big tournaments, I don't know if Whittaker will truly be up there, even if this fight goes 25 minutes. It's just mainly going to be significant strikes and total strikes. Do you really see him trying to test the grappling of Gastelum? I think that would be a mistake on his part. And then on the flip side for Gastelum, like, he could break the slate with a 7,100 salary if he goes out there and knocks out Robert Whittaker, considering, again, like I said at the top of the breakdown, the durability of Whittaker is a little bit questionable. Again, got rocked in the Cannonier fight, got rocked in the Darren Till fight. We know the fucking Yoel Romero fights, right? He was just getting bullied a lot in those fights, even though he came out on the winning end. But there are a lot of opportunities for Romero to finish that fight. So Gastelum's still a live dog, in my opinion, but ultimately I will go with Whittaker. I'm going to have some Whittaker on my lineups, considering he should be a good win and should give us a solid score. But man, you got to be worried about that power coming back from Gastelum, because he is live to knock you up from minute 1 to minute 25.
See, that's the issue for me also, is I want to take Whittaker so bad, but it's that 9,100 price tag. That's the scary part. If you saw when I pulled up his average points, I mean, in the wins he's gotten, it's scary how much he hasn't gotten the points wise. 88, 83, 66, 103. I know these are 3-round fights, but some of them are 5 rounds, like the Darren Till fight. 88 points, that's all he's gotten. And the control time is not the greatest. From a betting perspective, it's different, but from a DraftKings perspective, it's hard to trust Whittaker at 9-1. I know the striking's there, but it's just the takedown ability. He's not going to go for the takedowns. He's just going to go for the striking and knockout power. And Gastelum has looked decently well lately. So Gastelum is no pushover, in my opinion. From a betting perspective, like I said, I might have a little bit of different opinion. But from a DraftKings perspective, I think Gastelum can definitely rock that boat with 7,100 price tag. I mean, if you draft him at a low roster spot and the ownership is going to be there, if you think he pulls out the win, it's going to be basically the lock of the night. Like, basically at 7,100. Yeah. What else can he say? Honestly, I mean, that pivot that you're making from Whittaker to Gastelum at 7,100 is definitely going to pay off. Even if he loses, I think he can produce at 7,100. I mean, it's not that bad of a price tag in a 5-round fight. That's definitely going to go to distance, in my opinion. I don't think anybody's going to get finished in this fight. So if we see in his losses, he's even gotten a couple of 49, 63, 106 in a win. So in my opinion, I think he can do it. I think he can pull it off at 7,100. I know it's a scary aspect to go against Whittaker because the striking's there, the knockout power's there. The durability has been iffy here and there, but we've seen him confident. So, I mean, the Whittaker has fought pretty good guys, and the guys that Gastelum has fought, they've been out of the UFC for quite a minute. So, I think it's a toss-up fight. I think it's closer than everybody thinks it's going to be, but the Whittaker 9,100 is kind of scary to me. And I don't mind taking a shot at Gastelum. This is kind of a fight where I typically want to roster main events, but from a DraftKings perspective, I kind of am iffy on this main event, if that makes sense to everybody. That I don't really want to roster the main event if I don't have to, if that makes sense. So, in my opinion, this is definitely an iffy fight. I don't mind taking a shot on Gastelum, but like I said, be careful with Whittaker at 9,100. So, moving on to the female fight, though, in Lupita versus Panine. How do you think of this fight, man?
Honestly, I think this is a fight that most people should kind of avoid on DraftKings. Like, I don't think that this is going to be a high scoring fight. I think the highest score that you'll potentially get is Jessica Penne if she's able to pull off a scene here. I'm not that confident in her in the spot, right? She's coming up a 4-year layoff, and her wrestling really isn't up to snuff, in my opinion. The question marks are still out on Godinez, though, right? She's only 5-0. She won the LFA title last time around over a 5-round decision victory over Vanessa Demopoulos, and that's where we saw her best traits really shine in that fight, right? It's her striking, it's her ability to land solid combinations and really put the work on these girls. But I don't think she's like similar to the Whittaker and Gastelum fight we just talked about. I don't think Godinez is going to want to get into the grappling exchanges with Penne here, because that's pretty much the only place that Penne will probably be successful, right? She's not historically a good striker, and she's been out of the cage for as long as she has, like 4 years at this point in time. This is a tough out for her to come back to, even though Godinez is only coming into her 6th pro fight here. But on the Salvetri show that I dropped earlier today's Thursday. Yesterday or earlier.
One of the days.
Today, I should say. I'm getting all my fucking days mixed up. But earlier this afternoon, I dropped it, and I had Godinez as my fade of the night, because I just don't think that at 9,200 that she's going to live up to that price tag. Yeah, she should win this fight. Yeah, she should accrue a bunch of total strikes and significant strikes and all that. But how is it going to look when you got other people in that 9,000 range that are probably going to get a first round finish? You got like Razak Al Hassan, who's probably going to score very highly. You're going to get Tracy Cortez, who's probably going to score very highly. Do you really want to shell out 9,200 for a girl that's going to go out there and outstrike her opponent for 15 minutes? Like, you might land some good cash in the tournaments, but you're definitely not going to be hitting optimal or anything like that if that's your approach here. So I like Godinez. I think she'll outstrike Penne for the majority of the 15 minutes, but I just don't think she's going to live up to that 9,200 range. So fade, in my opinion, maybe have a little bit of Penne in case she does pull off that submission and actually, shakes the board up with that 7,000 salary that she's at. But I think the finish, if it comes from anybody, it might come from Jessica Penne. And that's why I'm just like, let's just stay the fuck away from this fight.
Yeah, from a fan's perspective and a betting perspective, I really like Lupita. I think that she's a hell of a fighter. I think this is her making her debut, or coming from the LFA. She looked good in the LFA, and I think she really has that knockout power and ability. But I want to see it transfer to the UFC, because we know how the LFA is compared to the UFC. That's the biggest thing. And 9,200, that's a hefty, hefty price tag. You really need that first round knockout to pay off that price tag. So, from a fan and betting perspective, I really like Lupita. I think she's going to be a hell of an athlete coming into the UFC in the women's division. I think she has a lot to prove. I think she's going to be a force to reckon with coming into the UFC. But for this card, it's a no-go for me. Also, I don't trust. I don't trust Pina or Jessica Pina either. I mean, 4 years with the ring rust is no thank you, in my opinion. I don't trust that at all. Just like I talked about in the betting video, it's hard to trust a girl who comes off a 4-year layoff, and we've seen the ring rust happen in the UFC time and time again with guys. So it's hard to trust this fight. I'm pretty much just exiting this card or this fight off the card and just kind of moving on, in my opinion. But going to another female fight I'm not really high on, Nunes and Fan. How do you think of this fight, my man? Yeah, the female fights on this card is just not the greatest, in my opinion.
Yeah, but this one I like from a betting perspective more than I do from a DraftKings perspective, because I do think that there is some solid value on Zara Farn here. I think that she's a much better technical striker. I think she's obviously going to have a huge size and reach advantage here. I think it's close to like 6-inch height advantage, as well as a 5 or 7-inch reach advantage here. We got to get the final statistics, or metrics, I should say, on Josia Nunes once they actually do everything and give us the tail of the tape. But like Zara Farron's had a rough stretch in the UFC, but can you really blame her? Like they brought her in as pretty much a filler for the
Yeah.
145-pound division to get girls like Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer W's. So yeah, if you wiki cap this fight and you see Zara Farron losing via submission to Megan Anderson, you're like, who the fuck would ever want to bet on this chick? But like
Literally.
you watch her fights and you see her regional tape and you see like, okay, she actually has some good work and she's able to put together some solid combinations. She uses her range decently. You know what I mean? For somebody as big as she is. And those are fights at 135 pounds. So luckily for her, she's going to be able to go down 135 pounds here. And I just don't know how the fuck Nunes is even fighting at 135, considering that she's 5'2". So
Yeah.
I don't understand the thought process there, but I think the stare down is going to look as comical as Dao Un and William Knight from the other week. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect of this fight. But in terms of how they actually match up from a DraftKings perspective, I think this is going to be another low scoring affair, but I do like the 7,600 on Zara Farn. If you are looking for dogs on this card, I think that Zara will win this fight. I think she'll keep the distance pretty well against Nunes here, and I think she'll land a bunch of significant strikes. But the question mark is, will she get the finish? And I just don't think she'll get the finish. I think she's more of a technical striker, a more of an outpoint you kind of striker rather than trying to look to get you out of there. So I think Nunes, this might actually look like a bull versus matador type of situation where you're getting Nunes just crashing forward, trying to land her big combinations. And that's been successful with her against super low level competition on the regional scene. But I don't know if it's going to cut it in the UFC, especially against a girl like Zara, who seems quite good on the feet. Like if you guys remember the Felicia Spencer fight, right? Before Felicia actually gets her down, she does a good job of piecing her up on the feet, keeping her at distance. But she just makes one little mistake in terms of not getting off the cage soon enough, and Felicia gets her to the ground and truly goes to work down there. But from a DraftKings perspective, I'd be surprised if either woman ends up on a high ranking lineup or anything like that. But I think if you are looking for a dog, Zara should definitely get the dub here. Again, I just don't know what kind of score we're going to see from her. Maybe 50 or 60 points. Is that going to cut it? I'm not 100% certain, but I do like Zara here. Betting perspective, I love her as a dog. She might even flip to being a favorite come fight time, considering where the line movement is going. But from a DraftKings perspective, it's hard to believe that either of these women are going to, rack up enough points to truly be optimal. But if you want my pick, I'm going Zara. I think she springs the upset. But from a DraftKings, I'm not how much of either woman I'm going to have on my lineups here.
Yeah, I think Zara really needs this. I think she really needs this fight in her corner. I really think that she wants this fight also because, like you said, look who she's fought. I mean, if we pull up her resume, Megan Anderson, look who Megan Anderson has fought. I mean, literally the king or the queen of women's MMA, literally. And Spencer is no pushover either. So she's fought hell of a good fighters. So, in my opinion, I think she wants this win. She wants that W on her resume, especially against Nunes, who's I think she's decent with the power and the knockout power is there. I think, like we said, from a betting perspective, it's kind of knockout or bust for Nunes. And from a betting perspective, I really want Farron too at dog money. But at 7.6, that price tag is definitely hefty in that mid range when I could go elsewhere and fit in my lineup a little bit better from a builder perspective. So I think Farron, she is a striker. I think if she wants to win, she's going to really have the control time, which we like to see in DraftKings. We like to see the striking. So we really need that aspect of her. But at 7.6, what are we going to get out of her? It's kind of a coin flip. We really don't know. We really don't know what's going to happen out of Nunes at 8.6 either. That's a hefty price tag for a girl coming in her debut. So again, these women's fights aren't really the best in my opinion. There's been a lot better women's fights but on this card, I'm just kind of crossing off the women's fights and just kind of moving forward. So going to a better fight though, and Close versus Stevens. Talk to me about this fight, my man.
Yeah, this one's a fun one too, right? Jeremy Stevens 8,400, but the line is starting to close too, right? Jakar Close is getting some love from the bettors, but from a DraftKings perspective, again, it doesn't really favor, or at least the newer scoring system doesn't really favor guys that have the type of approaches that Jeremy Stevens and Jakar Close take, which is like, I'm going to try to outpoint you with my striking. Like Jakar Close maybe has that gene in him that he can go out there and probably try to get some cage time, cage control time, pushing Stevens up against the cage or something like that. But like, I'm expecting this fight to pretty much be not a firefight per se, but like a technical striking fight where both guys are going to be looking to get the combinations off. I think Jeremy Stevens is a higher likelihood of getting the finish here, but like with how much confidence can you truly say that in, considering he hasn't had a knockout loss in how long now, right? Like it's
Yeah.
been several years now since we've actually seen him put anybody out. And the Jakar Close, outside of him rocking Benio Dariush the way that he did, the guy hasn't had a knockout victory in the UFC at all. Like the guy just
Agreed.
is a decision machine himself. But most of his victories are just coming by him outstriking his opponents. Just look at the fantasy, the average fantasy points there. You got 61 for Jakar Close. You got 55 for Jeremy Stevens. Like, is that how much are you really banking on that to work out for you, especially if you're looking to hit optimal in these big tournaments? I do think Jeremy Stevens wins. I think he lands the bigger, better shots. Again, I like the upside of him potentially having that knockout ability, especially with Jakar Close coming off such a devastating knockout to Benio Dariush last time around. But he has taken off relatively 14 months since that knockout. So maybe that's more than enough time for him to truly recover, recoup, and get back into the cage. Another aspect of this fight is that Jeremy Stevens is coming up to 155 pounds. So that's something that people are going to have to remember. But I think that this is a solid weight class for him. It's not like Jakar Close is this towering heavyweight or lightweight that's going to make him look completely small at lightweight. So, I like Stevens here. I think he lands more impactful shots, but I don't see him going for takedowns. I don't see him controlling it up against the cage. So, how many points are you truly getting off of Jeremy Stevens outside of him potentially getting a knockout here? But I'm not even rating that to be a very high likelihood. So, another one, just like the last couple of fights, where it's mainly going to be a striking fight. How much control time are you going to get from either guy? I'd say if anybody's going to get control time, it's probably Jakar. But if anybody's going to get a finish, it's probably Jeremy. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Jeremy here to win. I just don't know how exposed to him I'll be on him on DraftKings. Again, 8,400. I feel like there's other spots in that 8,400 range, 8,600 range that we could find that could produce better numbers for us.
Yeah, exactly. Like you were saying, control time is really going to be key in this fight because both guys, that's what they focus on is that control time. So for me, I like Stevens a lot more than Close just because of look who Stevens has fought. He's fought the best of the best in the UFC. He's a legend. He's a legendary fighter, in my opinion. I think he definitely has the resume to win. And Close, the only thing he has going for him is that calf kick, which recently, I hate to say it, but the UFC judges are not liking those calf kicks at all. They're not really liking that as a striking format. I mean, if you've seen the points, it's iffy if you're even going to get the judges liking those points. That's the problem. Is Close. That's what he mainly focuses on, and that's what scares me now. Is looking at the UFC now with the judges they have now. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough to trust a guy with the calf kicks like that. So for me, I really like Stevens at 8-4. It's an iffy price tag, yes, but in the mid range, if you want to fit somebody in that you think is I think is going to win, it's going to be Stevens for me. So I'd rather roster this than the main event. In my opinion, I think Stevens is a higher upside at 8-4 than Whittaker at 9-1. Just from a personal standpoint, if you saw his fights like I have pulled up, he has the caliber to hit over 100. So I don't mind him at 8-4. He's a mid-range option. He's not my favorite, but he's obviously not just going to be a pass for me. So for me, I'm all in on Stevens at 8-4. I don't mind it, but that's what I'm mainly looking at. Another fight that I really like, though, is Sherman Olorowski. How do you like this fight, man?
Yeah, again, another one where you see a lot of line movement here on the underdog. You got Chase possibly closing as a favorite as well once the fight actually goes off. But I like Chase here as a possible dog. I believe I had him as my dog of the night on the stream earlier today, and I think he has a possibility of going out there and knocking out Andrei Arlovski. Now it's funny because Chase Sherman is like seems to be the butt of the joke in the MMA community. I'm not entirely sure why. Like, what has he done to really rattle people's cages as much as he has? But this Chase Sherman 2.0 that we've been seeing since his loss to Augusto Sakai and then the eventual boot that he got from the UFC, he's looked great, man. Like he goes out there and starts calf kicking these dudes and really starts debilitating them, and then starts getting his hands going and starts knocking these guys out, just like he did against Ike Villanueva. How many points did he get that night? 100 points 100. That night. So that great showcase for him in that fight. But that's what he was doing on the regional scene. He had 3 fights before that on the regional scene, I believe, for island fights. And he did the exact same thing. Just beat up that lead leg, make sure that your opponent doesn't have their mobility or movement about them anymore. And that's Andrei Arlovski's game, right? He moves a lot, throws a lot of combinations, and that's how he's able to outpoint and beat guys like Philippe Lins and Tanner Boser. So I think that Chase Sherman is live for a finish here. I like him at that 7,700. I mean, I think that he could go out there and finish on Arlovsky. Arlovsky's taking this on short notice. If you guys remember, he just fought, I believe, little less than 2 months ago against Tom Aspinall and gets finished in that fight via submission. He did get rocked earlier in that fight too. But yeah, Chase, I think as long as that USADA suspension and whatever sauce he was on in that fight, as long as that wasn't too big of a factor for him to go out there and have the performances he's had in his last 4 fights, I think he should be able to implement the same type of game plan, go out there, chew up that lead leg of Arlovsky, and then start letting your hands go. Like even in his bare knuckle boxing fights, his hands are looking pretty solid. Like it looks like he's finally making some improvements. And it's so weird to say for a guy like Chase Sherman, but I do think that he's going to tear up the lead leg of Arlovsky. Arlovsky's not really a knockout artist anymore, right? I believe the last time he knocked anybody out was UFC 187 against Travis Brown. And, that was a long fucking time ago. So, yeah, he's more of an output puncher now. He's more of an activity guy, just try to rack up the significant strikes and just try to outpoint you and get that judge's scorecard. Whereas Sherman, I feel like he's going to be looking for the kill a little bit more. And I think he has a perfect game plan that he's been showing over his last handful of fights. And I think he can implement it very effectively here against Arlovsky. So yeah, I like him at that 7,700 range. If you guys are looking for dogs, I think he's one of the better dogs on the card that has a very high upside for potentially getting a finish too. So yeah, I like me some Chase here, and even from a betting perspective, you got to like him. You may have messed the best line if you're looking at best Chase right now, but I still think he's a solid pick, even if he goes off as a slight favorite here.
This is an interesting fight to me that I like hearing other people's opinions about, because it's so 50-50 in my opinion. It's the fact of what are we going to see that night, in my opinion. So Arlovsky, we've seen him fight the best of the best. Obviously, we've seen him have low volume here and there, but he goes to the style of who he's fighting. That's what we see. He trends to the style of how is he going to strike that night, depending on who he's fighting. I know Tom Aspinall, he was no pushover either. Aspinall looked amazing in that fight. Not gonna lie, Arlovsky just looked rocked. I don't think Arlovsky expected that out of Aspinall, so I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt in that fight. But Chase Sherman, he's 4-0. He's coming up out of great fights. Obviously, he has high upside at 7-7. It's just, what are we going to see out of Chase Sherman? Are we going to see the guy who ignites on fire and goes after Arlovsky? Because I think this is the highest caliber of fighter he's seen out of Chase Sherman. I think Sherman has not seen anybody like Arlovsky in a while, or if any time. So in Arlovsky, I don't think this is the lowest competition he's seen out of Sherman. So it's kind of like the benefit of the doubt. Who are we going to see steep to their level? We're going to see Sherman steep to the Arlovsky level. We're going to see Arlovsky steep to Sherman's level, because that's going to be key. It's going to be 50-50 in my opinion. I like 7-7 for Sherman. I think he has the knockout power. I think this is a big fight for him. This is a big step up. I think he's going to want to prove to the fans why he is the man of the UFC. But Arlovsky, he's going to go into this fight saying, I'm no pushover. Don't forget about me. I'm still here. And basically show Chase Sherman the legends can still do it. So, which we've seen before. We've seen young guys get knocked out by these older legends still in the game. So it's a close fight, in my opinion. I'm still 50-50 on it, which I hate to say that. I hate saying that to people that I'm still 50-50, but it's such a close fight that it's a hell of a fight that I cannot wait to watch for. When I don't mind 7-7 for Chase Sherman at all. I like that price tag for him. I think he has upside at that. I don't mind Arlovsky at 8-5 either. And in the middle of your lineup, I trust him more than I trust Stevens. So, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with either guy. But if you want to take dog money on Chase Sherman, I definitely would not blame you at all. So, I think this is a great fight that I really can't wait to watch for, honestly, on this card. And then Malkoun versus Al Hussein. Talk to me about this fight, man. This is not an interesting fight.
Yeah, you got Al Hassan obviously on the tail end of 2 straight losses now. Missed weight in both of those fights down at welterweight, which is why the UFC probably is pushing him to go up to 185 pounds now. But this seems like a layup of a fight. Jacob Malkoun pretty much got a similar opponent last time around in Phil Hawes, and we saw what Phil Hawes was able to do to him, just rush forward, land those big shots, and put him out. And I fully expect Razak Al Hassan to do the exact same thing here. Now, like in that Munir Lazzez fight, which is two fights ago now for Al Hassan, he did his Razak Al Hassan thing, which is crash forward, land your big shots, and get you out of there. But he wasn't able to get Lazzez out of there. Lazzez turtled up and shelled up very well up against the cage, really didn't eat the biggest shots that Razak had in those combinations. And then when Lazzez was still standing in front of him and Al Hassan was starting to suck wind, he's like, fuck, what do I do now? How am I supposed to beat this guy over 15 minutes? So we did see that there, and then obviously the Chaos Williams fight, right, gets deaded in like 30 seconds, so we
Yeah.
can't really take too much from that fight either. So that was a very tough one, or tough out for him. But like, do we really expect to see Al go out there and change up his game now that he's at 185 pounds? He's going to go out there and try to like implement his judo, try to get some takedowns and try to grind out a fucking decision victory. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
I think we're going to see him go out there, see what Phil Hawes did last time around, and try to replicate the same thing. We see Malkoun crash or crack under pressure against these heavy hitters and these heavy strikers. And what is Malkoun really going to do to try to, nullify that approach here from Razak? So, like I said, we had a bunch of big, 9,200, 9,100 salaries that we were talking about a little bit earlier in the show. At 9,300 here, I think that Razak will score at least 100 points for us here with that quick first round finish, and whatever it needs to take. But should this fight reach that second round, I'd be sweating my ass off if I got Razak Al Hassan in tickets, or if I got him in parlays or whatever the fuck it is, or in lineups here. But I think that we'll see that classic Al Hassan approach, which is just move forward, land the bigger, better shots. I think he's the much better striker here than Malkoun. Malkoun's claim to fame is being Robert Whittaker's jiu-jitsu coach, right? So,
Yep.
like, is he really going to get Al Hassan down in the first round? Is he really going to nullify the amount of power that's coming back his way from Al Hassan? I just don't see it happening. Like, Al Hassan, even though he's going up in weight here, he's still a big dude. Like, he's very muscular, very, very strong. And I think that Malkoun will struggle to get him down in that first round, and he's going to have to deal with the wrath of that power that Razak Al Hassan brings to the table. So I like Al Hassan here. I think he gets that first round victory, and I think that he's going to end up being on the optimal lineup for that big tournament. I think 9,300. This is one of the better guys that you're going to want to have to roster, because I think he will give us that. I'm sure his ownership is going to be very high. Don't get me wrong, but I think rightfully so. I think that he's going to have that knockout power to put Malkoun out within the first 2 minutes of this fight.
Let's just be happy that all his legal stuff is cleared. So that's what we need to also be happy about. So
not guilty.
He's still in the UFC. We got to be happy about that. But anyways, yeah, this is literally a first round or bust for me with Al Hassan. That's basically the tail of the tape. Like you saw me pull it up. Round one, knockout. I mean, we see it time and time again. 120, 107, 131. The knockout power is there. That's his game. That's his game plan, is go in the first round, give it all he has, and knock the opponent out, which he certainly can against Malkoun, because Malkoun's not a striker, obviously. He's literally the grappling coach of Whittaker. He's no striker. Like, that's not the game plan that he's going to carry. So, but then again, say this gets to the second round, say this gets to the third round, you're going to see me posting the gif of me sweating. So it's literally going to be scary if this does go to the second, especially the third round. I'm going to be sweating. So, because at 6'9", if Malkoun gets the win and he somehow pulls off the decision win in the round, or gets the win in second or third round somehow and subs him, that's going to be literally the slate that you're already done. So I'll be contrarian, maybe in one lineup, and have Malkoun just to be different, just to be kind of different here and there, and maybe have, like I said, just a low ownership Malkoun, and then try to pivot away from Al Hassan. But most of my lineups are going to have Al Hassan easily at 9-3, because that knockout power that he carries is unbelievable in my opinion. So, like I said, in most lineups, I'm going to have Al Hassan. But to be contrarian, I wouldn't mind throwing a 6'9" Malkoun in there just to be different, because we've seen Al Hassan with the cardio, all of a sudden his gas tank just is lowered. You'll see his fuel just go down in the second round, and then especially the third round. So, in my opinion, give me Al Hassan in first round knockout. But if not, go contrarian and get you some Malkoun. So, Luis Pena versus Nunez. This is a weird fight, in my opinion. Talk to me about this one, man.
Yeah, this one's an intriguing one, because I still want to see a little bit more of Munoz. I do favor him here from a betting perspective. I do like the line that it's getting better on him. The main reasoning is because you look at Luis Pena's stats. The guy has 47% takedown defense rate, and that's not going to cut it here against a guy like a high-level wrestler like Alex Munoz. The guy has a solid college wrestling background. Obviously was one of the head takedown guys down there, or sorry, one of the head wrestling guys down there at Team Takedown in Texas, before eventually that team blew up and he came over to Sacramento for Team Alpha Male now. And I believe that he will, he is the wrestling head coach over there at Team Alpha Male. And, if they're bringing in a guy to be a head coach for wrestling at Team Alpha Male, which is pretty much known for being like, fucking short, stocky wrestlers, guys that are
Yep.
able to get takedowns and really do good work from on top. You got to believe that they see something in Alex Munoz here. Munoz is 31 years old, so I'm sure like this might be the peak that we could be seeing at him. But you got to believe that he's starting to make some improvements in the striking game, which we saw in the Troy Lamson fight, which was right before his UFC debut. Troy Lamson, another high level wrestler that he was going up against, and it seemed like the wrestling kind of just nullified itself, and it became a striking match, and he won the striking match. But like, talk about a tough UFC debut against Nasrat Akbaraz.
Yeah.
Like, get signed to the UFC and they throw you in against Akbaraz. Sure, he gets a takedown right off the bat, but like after that, not able to secure takedowns. Nasrat just lights him up on the feet. And if you're gonna try to do like a glass half full type of thing here for Munoz, you got to commend the fact that he was able to go 15 minutes with Nasrat lighting him up the way that he was. So his durability seems to be there. He seems to, have a chin on him, have a beard on him. And I don't think that Luis Pena will be able to put him out here. My concern is like when Munoz does take him down, and I'm saying when, not if, when, because the takedown is going to happen. What's Pena's game going to look like off of his back? And I think it's slightly overrated. Like, he is very weird and lanky with his jiu-jitsu given his frame at this weight class. I believe he's like 6'3". So he's obviously, trying to throw up some weird shit off of his back. And we've seen it time and time again, but like, how effective is that truly? And you got to believe that him training at Alex Munoz training at Team Alpha Male, that they probably have him ready for something like that type of approach where just let's grind out from on top. So I think Munoz is a sneaky dog play here on the DraftKings side of things, because he's going to get takedowns, he's going to get control time, and at 7,500, man, you got to believe that he's going to live up to that, if not to exceed that, considering his style and game plan. That's DraftKings heaven right there. You got a guy that's going to be able to secure takedowns, but the concern is, will he be able to survive on top of Pena? I think Pena is slightly overrated at this point in time. Losing to Kama Worthy last time the way that he did, very underwhelming. But the guy's talented. I can't completely shit on the guy. But stylistically, I think this is a tough fight for him. I think we'll see Munoz secure takedowns, rack up some control time for us, and take home a decision victory. So yeah, I think Munoz could truly help and get you into the higher rankings and the higher placings in some of these tournaments. But I do like Nisa Munoz here as a dog.
I trust Munoz way more than I trust Sherman at this price tag, in my opinion. I think he's going to get a lot more takedowns at 7.5 because that's what he's known for. Munoz is a fiery sort of dude who goes in there and wants to be aggressive. We didn't get to see it in his UFC debut, obviously. That was just, I'm crossing that off because that was just a wash, in my opinion. We knew what was going to happen in that fight. It was a tough fight for him. We know how good Hespergrass is. I mean, that was a knockout fighter. So I'm just kind of crossing that fight off and giving him a new start, which Luis Pena, he has fought good fighters, but then again, look what he's done in the wins he's gotten. He hasn't done very much. I mean, 72, 106 is a good price, but at 77, 115, I mean, it's way too inconsistent. You're either going to get you 70 or either going to get you over 100. You don't know what you're going to get out of Pena. That's my issue. Is Munoz, I know what I'm getting. We know we're going to get the takedowns. We know we're going to get the wrestling. We know we're going to get the control time on the ground. And that's what we want at a 7.5 price tag. Like you said, what else can you want out of the 7.5 price tag? I mean, if he was 8K, then it would be a little bit different. But given that it's 7.5, I'm all in for it. I think if Munoz does lose in this fight, say he does, he's still going to get you the takedown points. He's still going to get you some of the control time points. So, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with that 7.5 price tag. I like this fight a lot. I want to see Pena in this fight. I want to see how crafty he can get on the ground, because this is where it's going to be really wrestling oriented, which you saw him try to do that weird finish that he tried to do that it really didn't pull off last fight. I mean, we saw him try to do some grappling, but I want to see it out of a guy who we know can definitely grapple on the ground like Munoz. So in my opinion, I'm locking in Munoz as a value play at 7.5. So if Pena does win, I wouldn't be shocked. I would just kind of say good for him, move on. But I'm really liking Munoz at 7.5. But jumping down to, I guess, a fight in Keish versus Cortez, we can't talk about the Algio and Ramos fight, which I'm really upset about. That was a hell of a fight, man. I was really loving that fight. Yeah. So let's talk about Cortez and Keish. What do you think of this fight, man?
Yeah, I put Tracy Cortez as my DFS lock of the night play, right? Like, I think she's going to go out there, secure takedowns, control time, the whole works, right? Just look at her last fight against Stephanie Yeager. I think she scored in the 100 points there. But that's going to be Cortez moving forward, right? She's going to go out there, she's going to land takedowns, she's going to get a bunch of control time. You don't really see. Sorry, it was the Mello fight that she scored 100 points.
103 that
Yeager fight. Yeah, but still not too shabby, right? Like
No.
you definitely know that you can kind of count on her to go out there, get these takedowns, and get control time. And not to mention those two fights that she had was up at 135. Now she's going back down to 125 pounds, where girls are either going to be her strength or less. The fact that she was able to handle the much bigger Vanessa Mello and Stephanie Yeager, who has an Olympic judoka background, who's probably, would thrive in those clinch positions that Cortez had her in. Cortez was the one kind of just throwing around and getting the takedowns and controlling those positions. So even if like Cortez doesn't get the takedown, like she still should get control time just from the cage clinch. But like I do expect her to get the fight to the ground here. Justine Kish just doesn't bring too much to the table outside of a solid striking game. But like she has no sauce on her punches. She doesn't really have that zest that's going to like knock her opponents out, right? Like she went 12 and a half, 13 minutes against Sabina Mazo last time around. And I had money on her as an underdog in that fight, plus 180. I'm like, this is a great fight for Kish to just crash forward in Mazo's face, crowd her with punches, don't let her game get going. And that's exactly what she did. But she made one little slip up. She gave her just enough room to allow Sabina Mazo to knock her head into orbit and then eventually follow up with the submission victory. But like that approach is not going to work here with Cortez, right? Like Sabina Mazo is trying to get distance. She's trying to get away from Kish, whereas Cortez is like, all right, you want to come forward. I'm probably going to counter with a double leg or try to put you on your butt as fast as possible. So this is a completely different fight. I see a lot of people putting too much stock into that Justine Kish and Sabina Mazo fight. These are two completely different fighters. So I think that we're going to see Cortez go out there again, secure takedowns, control time, all that, all the works. So I think Tracy Cortez is definitely one of the one of the locks of the night. I got to say, in terms of the $9,000 range, somebody that you can almost guarantee is going to score over 100 points, especially in this fight against Kish, who just does not do much off of her back, powers and muscles out of those positions. But I don't think she's going to be the stronger fighter here. And I think we'll see Cortez ground her for the majority of the 15 minutes. I'd be surprised if we saw Cortez get a finish, but who needs a finish when you're getting, close to 10 minutes of control time, which is what I'm kind of expecting her to do here. So yeah, I like Cortez here. I think it's the most straightforward play on the card, to be honest. Very surprised if Kish wins. And even if Kish does win, like, what's she going to score? 45 points, 50 points, probably outstriking Cortez on the feet, right? So is she really worth it at 7,200? There's much better spots as an underdog that's probably going to score higher than her. I think there's a ton of live dogs on this card, let's be honest, but I just don't think that Kish fits that mold. So I'll go Cortez here, and yeah, she's going to be in staple on a ton of my lineups this weekend.
Yeah, Kish ain't it at that price tag for me. I'm all in on Cortez. Cortez, I think she's basically going to be the face of women's MMA in a little bit. I think it's going to be time to come. I think she's really stepping up. I think that UFC really wants her to be that face. I mean, she has it all, obviously. If we've seen her on Instagram, she's all over Instagram. But I mean, literally, she's going to be the face of UFC. Let's not forget about it. I mean, it's definitely her. So
don't jinx it, my man. Don't jinx it.
I mean, I'm just saying. But speaking of that, we'll talk about that at the end of the video with Nunes getting another fight. So for the double championship, that's what we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, Tracy Cortez at 9,000, she's basically one of the top plays in my opinion. Even if she doesn't get the finish, I think she's going to win this in the decision. Like I said in the betting video, I think you can put great money on her getting the decision. Obviously, that's what I'm mainly looking at from a betting perspective, from a Draftkings perspective. 9,000, she can get you all. She's going to get it all. She's on the rise. She has a high potential. The upside is there for her at 9,000. Kish, I just don't think has it anymore. I don't trust Kish at all. So I'm taking potential. I'm taking the young girl in her prime at 9,000 and locking her in, honestly, at 9,000. What else can you say about it? Obviously. I mean, so it's plain and simple. I'm logging in Cortez at 9,000. Give me all of her in my lineup, and I'm going from there. But now we're going to heavyweights. Oh, Lordy. Talk to me about this heavyweight fight.
Is it not the most anticipated fight? Like, out of we got Bellator, we got that fucking boxing card, and then we got the UFC. Is this not the most anticipated fight? If it's not, check yourself before you wreck yourself, because this is easily the fight that you should be most excited for. There's so many question marks, right? But I think the question marks truly come from the Juan Espino side, though, right? We only have tape on him from The Ultimate Fighter and 9 seconds of him getting starched by Vitaly Minakov like years ago when he was 60 pounds heavier and definitely not the fighter that he is now. So we completely throw that Vitaly Minakov fight out the window. But like his Contender Series run, his Ultimate Fighter run against Ben Sassoli, fucking Maurice Green, what's that guy's name? Jeff Frazier, whatever the hell his name was, and Jeff Hughes.
One of the two.
Justin Frazier, I feel like, is Justin Frazier. One of those guys. Yeah. Doesn't matter anymore because he's not in the UFC, right? They didn't even give him a contract, even though he was the runner-up that season.
Jeff Hughes,
but what we see in those fights, though, is we see Espino ground them and then eventually get the submission victory. But the one thing I didn't like, and again, the very little tape that we do have on him outside of the 10 minutes that he was laying on top of Ben Sassoli, is that like sometimes he lets his opponents up, and that just leads me to believe like he doesn't have the greatest top control, other than when he's like seeking like submissions or something like that. And then Romanov, on the other hand, he's a big dude himself, right? The guy's he might be a little bit more flashy and more brutish than what Espino brings to the table, who's a much more technical wrestler. But Romanov seems like the truth to me, man. We have so much more footage on him. We can see him go into third rounds and still finishing guys. We've seen him taken down once, but he gets right back to his feet pretty much within 30 or 40 seconds. And I don't think we'll see him make the mistake that he made in that fight, which was a lazy leg kick that his opponent was able to kind of capitalize on, rush forward and take him down. I don't think we'll see that from Romanov here. I got to give the slight advantage on the feet to Romanov, as I see him a little bit more comfortable there. Whereas Espino, it just seems like he has like a feint takedown into an overhand right. He caught Jeff Hughes with it a couple of times. He clocked Maurice Green clean with it, and then eventually followed up with the takedown there. But I gotta go with the younger guy here. You got 10 years of youth on Romanov. He's the more explosive, agile guy. I think that the first round is going to be competitive, but I think that once Espino starts to feel, some resistance, something that he's never felt in his last several fights, he's going to start to suck wind a little bit more. And I think that that's where we'll see Romanov start to take off. The one thing that we're kind of leaving up to hypotheticals is also, we don't know what Espino looks like off of his back. Like, there's no footage of him off of his back, at least what we have access to. So is he a fish out of water off of his back? Apparently he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but that doesn't really mean that you can fucking throw up a flying triangle or anything like that. Like, there's so many question marks for Espino still. So I do like Romanov. You got to have action on both sides here, I think, from a DraftKings perspective, considering the amount of questions that there are about both guys. But I think I'll be a little bit heavier on the Romanov side than I will be on Espino. And at 8,800, takedowns, control time, and I think the possibility of a finish in that second round from Romanov via TKO is definitely going to have him scoring, in the optimal lineup, having him up there. So yeah, I'll go with King Kong here, second round TKO, and I'll definitely have some or a good chunk of him on my DraftKings lineups.
See, that's the thing, is I'm trying to pull it up, but Espinal, he still has grappled. That's the thing. He's still grappling. We may not have footage of it, but we know that he still is in all these other lower types of situations, like in the lower federations of those, like the grappling, whatever. I don't even know what it's called, but he's been grappling. We've seen it happen time and time again where the grappling is there, and this is basically going to be who can body check first, who's going to get that person on the ground first and get that sub, basically. And if you think Romanov can throw Espinino, then that's gonna be hell of a fight. I mean, it's gonna be body spline, which that's the thing, is the heavyweights, you never really know. You don't know until you see it. Like we've seen it with Jack Collier. I mean, look at the dude, literally.
That's my boy.
I mean, just saying. I mean, look at the dude. So we really don't know. That's the issue, is I don't know how this fight, how they're gonna look. Weigh-ins is gonna be key also to see how Espinino does look at 40. I mean, coming into this fight after the layoffs that he's had, I want to see weigh-ins. That's going to really sway my opinion, because at 7-4, if Espinino somehow gets the knockout or the sub, that's going to be a price that he inflated easily. And Romanov at 8-8, that's a hefty price that he needs that finish to pay off that price tag at 8-8. So Romanov, he's no pushover either. He's a smash dude. He has heavy knockout power. But the thing is, look who he's fought. That's my only issue. I think Espinino is a great fighter that he's going up against. That's my only concern. This is a really tricky fight to adjust to until we see the weigh-ins, until we see how both guys look, especially Espinino. So I don't mind taking dog money at 7-4 with Espinino, but Romanov, I really like him at 8-8 too. If he gets the finish, he definitely will. So the weigh-ins, though, are going to be key. That's really going to be key to me. But going to a grappling match now, and Mearshart versus Fabinski. What do you think of this fight, man?
Yeah, this one is where it could look like, Gerald Mearshart is losing the entire fight, and then he throws up a submission of some sort and
Yeah,
catches, and he catches Fabinski in something, right? It's tough for Fabinski because every time he's gone up against a guy that has legitimate jiu-jitsu or something like that, he gets tapped, right? You get Michel Prazeres, who catches him in a guillotine choke. You get Andre Muniz, who's a high-level black belt, and catches him in an armbar. Now, out of the three guys, don't get me wrong, Gerald Mearshart, Andre Muniz, and Michel Prazeres, the number three for me is going to be Gerald Mearshart. He's definitely not as skilled as those other guys. But Fabinski he only fights one way. He only knows one way. You want control time? Look at those fucking numbers right there.
yeah,
Jared McClellan, 12 minutes of control time, right?
yeah.
Just insane amount of control time that you're getting out of Fabinski time and time again. That's just how he fights. The guy doesn't strike. He just throws a one or two shots out there and he tries to drag you to the ground. But I just something in my gut. Like I had this feeling about Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades when they were originally scheduled to fight in November. I was the only guy. I'm not sure if you were watching the odds show back then, but like the Friday night odds show, I was the only guy picking Derek Lewis to win by knockout, and everybody's calling me crazy. Then fight day, the fight gets canceled, and over that stretch of the 3 or 4 months between the times that they actually were scheduled to fight and when they fought, my perception changed, and I got kind of into that herd mentality where I was just like, yeah, Blades is the much better fighter here, and he should just go out there and grind him out over 5 rounds. And what the fuck happens? Derek Lewis ends up knocking him the fuck out just as I expected him to.
Yeah.
And that's what the feeling that I'm getting here with Gerald Mearshart is he's probably going to lose this fight over, 95% of the time or 95% of the fight, and then throw up a submission of some sort and catch Fabinski in something. Something that I uncovered earlier on the prop show that I did with Cody was that 15 out of the 31 victories for Mearshart have come via finish in rounds 2 or round 3. So the guy does get a little bit stronger as fights go on. He is very resilient. He is very durable. And I just don't see any crazy, ground and pound techniques from Fabinski. The guy's a lay-in prayer. So I'm fully expecting Gerald Mearshart to get taken down, but I'm expecting him to be ready for that, throw up submissions, guillotine, whatever the fuck it is, but just stay active enough off of his back that he's going to be making Fabinski work. And then he possibly finishes him in the second or third round. So what are you getting? 7,900 on Mearshart here. I think he's live for a finish, but you just got to be comfortable with the fact that he's probably going to be losing the entire fight until he pulls off a submission. So that's very risky, right? How much do you want to truly bank on that? I'm not sure how much I'll be banking on that myself, but I'm going with my gut feeling this time around. I'm going to take Mearshart by submission, and I'll have a little bit of him at 7,900. I feel like there's more confidence spots that I have in that higher $7,000 range, but Mearshart will definitely score some good points if he's able to take home that submission victory. With that said, though, is he going to get strikes? Is he going to get control time? What else is he going to get? We're just banking on him to get a finish here. So I'll go Mearshart. I'll go finish, probably second or third round. But yeah, Fabinski on the flip side, if he wins, you're going to get a bunch of control time and takedown. So he could end up being optimal himself, even at that 8,300. So it's good to have both guys if you're a mass line kind of guy. But I just slightly favor Mearshart and think he's going to lock up a submission of some sort.
That's what scares me is if Babinski does go into this fight and gets that takedown immediately. God, Mearshart is going. I don't think he can do it. That's my only issue. Is Fab? I mean, he goes in there straight for the takedown and gets that control time, like you were saying, at 8-3. Golly, that price tag is going to be optimal. It's literally going to be you're going to have him in your lineup
For sure.
So that's the problem. Is Mearshart? Yeah. He's a good grappler. It's just how does he going to react to another grappler? Is my opinion. Well, you really didn't get a good taste of him in the Chimaev fight, obviously. I mean, who's going to against Chimaev, obviously. So. I mean, come on now. But like I said, this is a good fight, in my opinion. I think it's going to be bodies flying. I really think so. I really think we're going to see who can out-grapple who. And I think if Babinski does get that takedown early and gets that control time, it's going to be optimal at 8-3, and you're going to have to play him. This fight, in my opinion, though, is going to be pivotal to the night. This fight is definitely going to tell you who's going to go out on top, in my opinion. At 8-3 and 7-9, one of these two guys is going to be in the optimal lineup. It's just who are you going to pick? Who do you trust more with the grappling side? So this fight, I think, like I said, this is going to have to be in your lineup, one of the two guys. I'm rostering one of the two. I'm going Babinski. You're going Mearshart. I don't mind either guy. I think Mearshart, if he does get the grappling upside, if he does out grapple Babinski, I think he can win this. Obviously, I think this is a good step up for him. But if Vinsky does get the takedown early, this is his fight to win. So, like I said, I think you have to have this fight in your lineups. It's going to be a great fight to watch, but body's fine. So definitely check out that fight. But let's go to Burchak and Gravely. What do you think of this fight, man?
This one's like, I understand why Gravely is as big of a favorite as he is, right? 9,400. He should almost have the same type of approach as Cortez, which is just takedowns, getting this fight down time and time again, control time, strikes from on top. I'm not sure how high of an upside he has for a finish here against Burchak, as Burchak is quite durable and has some good jiu-jitsu off of his back, and he could probably keep Tony Gravely on his toes. But I still do lean Gravely here. From a betting perspective, probably a parlayable spot. I'd agree with that. But in terms of a Draftkings perspective, 9,400, he should score well, right? Like, he should score in the 100 to 110 round mark, or 110 point mark. And I don't know though. I just feel a little bit more comfortable with like Cortez and Al Hassan, who I believe should go out there and get those knockouts and a bunch more control time. Like, I trust Cortez to get more control time than Gravely this weekend, and that's kind of why I'd be more on the Cortez train than I would be on the Gravely train. And then again, Al Hassan getting that first round knockout. I think Cortez and Al Hassan are probably the best spots in the $9,000 range, but like Gravely could do it too. But 9,400 compared to what 9,100 and 9,000, I think we're getting for the other two. I lean Gravely here. I just don't see much upside for Burchak here. Maybe a Hail Mary submission off of his back or something like that. But I definitely favor Gravely pretty heavily in this fight.
See, that's where I'm looking at also. I love Gravely here. I mean, this is his fight to win, man. I think the submission game that he has can definitely win this over Burchak. I mean, Gravely, the wrestling is in his favor, coming from the ground up. I think that's where his fight's going to be, is getting Burchak to the ground and getting that sub. That's what we've seen out of Gravely. He should win this fight. If we look at the past fights that Gravely has, I mean, he's a guy that he looked good in this last fight. I mean, he didn't look bad. And Brett and John's is no pushover either. I know that's not a familiar name, but he's good. He's a legend, man. I mean, going to Bellator now, he's no pushover, and he looked good in that fight. So many people might not know Johns now, but Johns back then, he was a good fighter. Not gonna lie, in my opinion, he was, at least. So Tony Gravely, though, I think this is his fight to win at 9-4. It's going to be sketchy to roster him at 9-4. I trust Cortez more than him. I think Cortez is the higher upside, like you were saying. For Gravely at 9-4, I don't mind it at all if you want to get to him. I think it's going to be a good ownership play at 9-4, because many people are not going to rush him at 9-4. They're going to look at that 78 and say, no way, I'm not paying 9-4 for a 78 average guy. But from the guys who have watched UFC, they know Gravely's upside is there, especially against Burchak. So I don't mind that at all. And then going to the last fight of the night, Bush and Hubbard. What do you think of this fight, man?
I'm leaning Dakota here, but the only issue that I have is the fact that it's on short notice, right? The guy has a strong wrestling game. He has a good wrestling background too, but the short notice does worry me a little bit. He's good. Going to need a solid 15 minutes of cardio here. Austin Hubbard will definitely have the advantage on the feet, and the longer this is on the feet, I think that Hubbard is live to truly just piece him up. I'm not entirely sold on the fact that Austin is a finisher. So if he does win this fight, it's probably over 15 minutes. And again, if he does win it, how much is he truly going to score at 8,900? Again, he's mainly a striker. He doesn't really go out there and seek control time. But again, let's not overlook the fact the UFC is pretty much matched him with all grapplers outside of Kyle Prepelic. So we haven't really seen him implement that grappling or that control time that we want to see from him, or if that's something that he's going to be searching for. With Dakota Bush, on the other hand, he's going to be going for takedowns. He's going to be racking up some control time, especially if he ends up winning this fight. So I'm going to look to have some Bush around 7,300. Again, if he does rack up and get that W for us in a decision, which I think is his most likely outcome, especially considering how good Austin Hubbard, even though he lost the Marco Madsen fight and the Davey Ramos fights, he looked good defensively, right? Not to get finished in those guys. And I think those guys are much higher level grapplers than what Dakota Bush brings to the table. But ultimately, I do think that Bush will secure takedowns. And again, that's going to look good on the DraftKings side of things. It's going to look good when he's starting to get that control time for us. And at 7,300, man, I think that he'll rack up some good points for us here. So yeah, I do like Bush. Not as confident as some other dog spots on the card, but yeah, I do think that Bush is live to give us a good score this weekend.
See, I really like Bush also. Luke from the betting podcast really made a good point that I really didn't get to see until now. Was Austin Hubbard came out with a comment that he's working on the mental game, which that's what's
Hmm.
sketchy to me is how he's working with the mental game, because he said he's mentally not there in the fights. If we've seen that with a guy, let's make a comparison in the NBA with Andre Drummond right now. We've seen Andre Drummond literally mentally not want to play. So that's the issue for me is Austin Hubbard going to want to go out and fight a guy like Dakota Bush? If Dakota Bush is coming out of LFA, who has a hell of a resume in LFA, I think I like him in LFA. He had killer knockouts. He had huge potential with the power that he carries in his hands. I'm liking the underdog here in Dakota Bush at 7-3. That's a price tag I'm willing to pay for a knockout upside that you don't know what we're going to get out of Dakota Bush, obviously. But if we get the upside of him at 7-3, I'm loving it. I mean, that's going to be a knockout dude who can pay off that price tag with an ease. So I'm taking the guy in Dakota Bush as the underdog. I'd rather roster him than Austin Hubbard at 8-9. That's a tough price tag for me to trust. If we even look at his average points, 45 for 8-9 price tag. I mean, for the upside that we don't know we're going to get out of Austin Hubbard at all. We don't know how he's going to look. We don't know how he mentally is going to want to play out this fight. I'm not trusting at 8-9 at all. I'd rather go Dakota Bush at 7-3. But do you have any last closing thoughts, man, before we head out of here?
Not really, man. Like again, I think this is a great card. You got to be very careful, and I think you hit the nail on the head in regards to that Gerald Mearshart and Fabinski fight, as I believe that will let us know which lineups are actually going to end up cashing. But yeah, I think there's a solid amount of underdogs on this card, and you have to be very particular in terms of which ones you end up choosing. But yeah, I think this could be one of those lineups that ends up winning that big tournament, and you see a lot of underdogs on it because guys, these underdogs, if they do win, more than likely they're going to get a finish too, right? You got Chase Sherman that's live for a finish. You got Gerald Mearshart that's live for a finish. Again, even Alexander Muniz may not get a finish, but you might get a solid 15 minutes of control. Well, maybe not 50 minutes of control time, but close, 8 to 10 minutes of control time, possibly. That's definitely a possibility here. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. Hopefully one of us ends up in one of those top spots and we can brag about it to the other guy. But I'm really looking forward to the fights this weekend. And yeah, again, always happy to chop it up with you, Cody. It was definitely a pleasure as well. So I'm happy to do this whenever you want to hit my ass up. I'm down to do it, brother.
Always, man. But before we head out of here, this is what I want to look at to show everybody. Literally, Babinski at 8-3 and Mearshart at 7-9. The fight that we were going to have in the meat and potatoes of now literally we have to figure this out where this is going to turn their lineup into make or win it, basically, with the 8-3 or 7-9. But that's just kind of a comparison to show everybody in Stevens and even close at 8-4 and 7-8. Those are the next two.
Yep.
So definitely there's going to be pivotal points. Always definitely check out the weigh-ins, because that definitely is key. Always keep up with UFC until Saturday, the day of the fights, because there could be a fight off the card, which we've seen that happen, or guys pass out. We've seen that happen already here and there. So we've seen judges obviously throw fights here and there with the Griffin fight, but that's another story for another day. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to get into that fight. But yeah, man, it was fun talking to you. It was definitely fun breaking this card down. I cannot wait to see the outcome of both of us with this card, man, and I cannot wait to talk to you again. But thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this breakdown of the UFC fight for this Saturday. Have a great and safe rest of your night, everybody.